The story centers on Diaki, a widowed mother of two who works as a senior employee at a laundry shop. In the middle of her busy routine, she receives a call from someone claiming to be a bank assistant manager. After being rejected for loans countless times, she is told that her application has finally been approved, but only if she pays an administrative fee up front. The next day, Diaki goes straight to the bank to confirm the promise in person. However, the person she meets is not the man shown in the photo, but a woman with a similar name. When Diaki explains that she has already paid the administrative fee, the bank employee has no idea what she is talking about and clarifies that the bank never asks customers to make deposits before a loan is released. That has already packed essential equipment. Park instructs her to stay put and avoid reckless actions. Afraid of losing the trail, the four of them ignore the warning and decide to follow the big boss anyway. They have barely gone far when Gibyom suddenly appears, carrying a severely injured Jaemin. Deok-hee immediately tries to stop the bleeding, while waiting for an ambulance to arrive. Before losing consciousness, Jaemin hands back Deok-hee's phone and reveals that he managed to record a video of the big boss, whose face is partially hidden under a hat. The recording confirms that the boss is planning to leave China. Without hesitation, Deok-hee and Sukja decide to chase after him the moment the ambulance arrives. On the way, Deok-hee keeps replaying the video of the boss and notices a distinct habit. Every time he checks his watch, he unconsciously shakes his hand. Meanwhile, Detective Park arrives at the crime scene and is assisted by Bong Rim as a translator. Despite the evidence, the Chinese police dismiss the massacre as nothing more than a gang fight over narcotics, completely missing the real mastermind and the larger crime behind it. Determined not to leave the case unfinished, Park pleads for Chinese officers to escort him to the airport before the big boss escapes. The commanding officer remains skeptical at first, as after losing all her money. With nowhere else to go, she plans to temporarily stay in the storage room at the laundry where she works, holding on until she can somehow get her money back. The story then shifts to China, to the central hub behind the wave of phone scams. Inside this place, call center workers are forced to work against their will. Many of them are Koreans, who were lured with promises of legitimate jobs, only to be trapped in a life of suffering. One of them is Jaemin. He is the call center worker who successfully scammed Deok-hee and continues to scam others. The workers are constantly monitored by gang members and face physical punishment if they do not perform well. They live like prisoners, unable to contact anyone and unable to return home because their passports have been confiscated. Growing sick of this life, Jaemin secretly plans an escape while the gang members are asleep. Before retreating, he witnesses brutal torment carried out by the director and the true mastermind behind the operation, known as the Big Boss. Two workers attempt to escape, and one of them is executed as an example. Before going back inside, Jaemin carefully takes note of a building called Chunhalu. Back at the laundry, that is the moment Deok-hee realizes she has been scammed, and the shock drains her completely.
이거 진짜 너무 아까운데 이번엔 진짜 어디 돈 빌린다니까요?
제가 남 같지가 않아서 그래요.
Without wasting time, she goes to the police station to file a report and explain what happened. The detective handling the case, Park, is stunned when he learns that Deok-hee transferred money 8 times. In total, she lost $32,000, all of it coming from her life savings and loans borrowed from a loan shark. Feeling mocked, Deok-hee removes her neck brace to show the scars left behind after her house burned down. She tells Detective Park to stop treating her like an idiot because he has never experienced what it feels like to lose a home. That loss is exactly why she desperately needed the loan, only to end up being deceived instead. This is where it all begins. This is Citizen of a Kind. After leaving the police station, Deok-hee goes to the daycare to pick up her 2 young children. She is forced to do this herself because she can no longer afford childcare services. After hearing this, Deok-hee asks him to call back in 5 minutes. She then contacts Detective Park to report that Jaemin is willing to provide leads and asks the police to prepare proper questions. Instead of taking it seriously, the authorities brush her off and tell her to contact another local police office. With little time to spare, Jaemin calls again and tells Deok-hee to write down a single word, Chunhalu. This becomes the first real clue pointing toward the scam network. By the time Deok-hee reaches the police station, her energy returns. She follows Detective Park all the way to the restroom just to explain that Chunhalu refers to a location near buildings with the same name in China. Park shows no interest at all and walks away, leaving Deok-hee behind. With the police failing to act, she realizes she may have to face the criminals on her own. Her first step is tracking down a place called Chunhalu. The problem is that there are 72 buildings with that exact name, scattered far apart, making the task feel nearly impossible. The next day, Deok-hee starts handing out flyers to find other scam victims, hoping to gather more information. While she is working, Jaemin contacts her again. She explains that the police refuse to continue the investigation without Deok-hee has two close friends who share her struggles. One is Sukja and the other is Bong-rim, a woman originally from China. Soon after, Deok-hee receives a call from Detective Park. He informs her that the police have frozen the scammer's bank account, but the money has already been withdrawn and is likely gone for good. With no other options, the case will be closed, and Deok-hee is told to accept the loss and treat it as a lesson. Unwilling to accept that outcome, Deok-hee insists on speaking with him face-to-face and immediately heads back to the police station. On the way back to the police station, Jaemin contacts Deok-hee again. As expected, she lashes out at him for scamming her. This time, however, Jaemin has a different purpose. He offers to become an informant for Deok-hee and the Korean police, hoping to expose the massive scam operation based in China. Deok-hee wonders why he chose her. Jaemin explains briefly that she stood out because of her determination. She was the fastest victim to send money while others were still dealing with paperwork. Sukja supports the idea, hoping for a change of air. Left with no real choice, Bong-rim finally agrees to help her friend. Before long, the three women arrive at an airport in China, where they are picked up by Bong-rim's younger sister, A-lim. From there, they head straight to investigate their first location. At the first building, Deok-hee and Bong-rim go inside while Sukja stays in the car with A-lim, taking photos of the surrounding area as documentation. Inside, Deok-hee and Bong-rim try to distract a worker by offering a new type of fabric. Instead of cooperation, they are met with hostility, and Bong-rim ends up injuring two of her fingers during the confrontation. The story then cuts back to Jaemin and the other workers during dinner. One employee, clearly under the influence of drugs, suddenly turns violent. Another worker, disturbed by his behavior, starts attacking him. Unable to tolerate the abuse, Jaemin steps in to help, only to be brutally beaten himself. After being taken back to his room, the intoxicated man, Gi-byom, approaches Jaemin again, desperate for drugs because he cannot sleep. Jaemin ignores him and instead seeks out a senior staff member, offering a small bribe in exchange for being promoted to a supervisory role. The next day, Jaemin is officially appointed as a supervisor. He immediately asserts without solid evidence and a clear address. Jaemin can only provide one detail, a sewing machine that suggests the place might be operating as a garment workshop. In the middle of the call, Sukja approaches Deok-hee with devastating news. Child Protective Services plans to take her two children after a coworker reported that they were not being properly cared for.
제가 애들 안전하게 보호할 거거든요. 그리고
어머니,
제발요.
Overwhelmed by one problem after another, Deok-hee opens up to her friends. Bong-rim, who is originally from China, explains that the location is not too far away and can be reached by air in about an hour and a half. She also mentions that her younger sister works as a taxi driver in that area. Hearing this, Deok-hee begs Bong-rim to take her to China so she can find the exact location and confront the criminals herself. He immediately asserts his authority over the person who attacked him the night before. More importantly, he uses this opportunity to gather evidence that could help the police shut down the operation. When he tries to send the photos and documents, the attempt fails due to poor network access. Later that night, Jaemin sneaks into the manager's office to resend the evidence that could not be transmitted earlier. At the same time, Gi-byom casually walks in, nearly exposing Jaemin's presence. Following Jaemin's instructions, Gi-byom willingly creates a distraction, buying him enough time to finish his task.
정신병자 새끼야. 빨리 샀잖아. 가리 좀 해주세요. 개새끼야 봐.
Elsewhere, the call center managers gather for a meeting, but the big boss does not show up. The branch manager overseeing Jaemin's location starts complaining about holding a high position while still being paid poorly. Unbeknownst to him, the big boss hears every word and quietly decides to teach him a lesson. Back in Korea, Detective Park arrives at his office and is stunned to see his colleague organizing the evidence files sent by Jaemin. This confirms that Deok-hee truly has an insider feeding her information. Detective Park immediately contacts Deok-hee, shocked to learn that she has gone all the way to China. He informs her about the files Jaemin sent and forwards all the photos, giving Deok-hee and her companions clearer leads to locate the exact building. Before long, they finally manage to locate the real Chunhalu building and even spot Jaemin inside. Unfortunately, just as Sukja tries to capture evidence, she realizes she forgot to insert the memory card, making all the photos useless. Deoki comes up with another plan to get closer to Jaemin. Together with Bongrim, she pretends to be a tailor, hoping to signal that they are already in China. However, Jaemin fails to recognize the message and leaves with the other supervisors. Once Detective Park receives the documentation photos from Sukja, he finally has solid evidence in hand. Seeing an opportunity to prove himself and advance his career, he asks his superior for permission to be officially dispatched to China. Meanwhile, Deoki and Bongrim continue waiting outside. Bongrim, who speaks fluent Chinese, excuses herself briefly. At the same time, Jaemin arrives with a senior supervisor for a simple clothing fitting. Deoki, nervous and unable to understand the language, nearly gives herself away. At the last moment, Bongrim then steps in, stating that she has proof and threatening to expose the situation to the media, accusing the police of deliberately allowing the arrest to fail. Unwilling to risk his reputation, the commander finally agrees to help. At the airport, Deoki spots a suspicious man and starts following him. While riding the escalator, she suddenly notices another man shaking his hand while checking his watch. In that instant, she realizes this is the real Big Boss. As a seasoned criminal, the Big Boss quickly senses that Deoki and Sukja are tailing him. He confronts them, and Deoki, clearly shaken, explains that she is a victim of his scam. Uninterested in complications, the boss hands over compensation, offering 3 times the amount she lost, hoping to make the problem disappear. Realizing that this is no longer about money, Deoki throws the cash back and chases after him.
절실한 사람들 등쳐먹는 너. 이거 가져가, 이 새끼야.
Her defiance leads to her being dragged into a restroom, where she is brutally beaten and left behind once the boss is satisfied. Moments later, the boss realizes his passport is missing and rushes back to search the restroom. He finds it in Deoki's hands. Without hesitation, she tears and swallows part of the document, ensuring he cannot flee China. Enraged, the boss prepares to kill her. At the last possible moment, the police arrive along with Detective Park. The Big Boss and his men are arrested on the spot and taken away to face prison. Days later, Jaemin, now recovering from his injuries, reveals everything about the boss's criminal operation. Meanwhile, the boss's lawyer approaches Deoki with an offer of $300,000 in exchange for dropping the charges. She refuses without hesitation and stands firm in her decision. On the drive home in the laundry van, Deoki calls her children, who are now with Sukja and Bongrim. In the end, she has successfully regained custody of her son and daughter and finally begins to reclaim her life. So the moral of the story is never trust an easy money phone call, because one admin fee can turn into an international stress tour real fast. At this moment, Bongrim returns and steps in as a translator. When the senior supervisor decides to buy food, Bongrim leads him away, creating a brief window for Deoki and Jaemin to interact. Feeling awkward, Jaemin asks Deoki to carry his phone, which is hidden in a basket, so he can continue sending information without raising suspicion. That night, Deoki contacts Detective Park again and learns that he will arrive in about an hour. Because the case has escalated, he advises her to prepare to leave as Chinese police are scheduled to conduct a raid the next morning. At the same time, Jaemin discovers that the Big Boss is coming that very night. Not wanting to waste the chance, he immediately warns Deoki. The news sends everyone into panic, especially since Detective Park is still on his way. Elsewhere, Gibeom, a heavy drug addict, uses narcotics in a restroom and collapses. At that exact moment, a vehicle arrives and launches a sudden attack on everyone inside. This turns out to be a trap set by the Big Boss to punish the manager who complained earlier about his salary. After the massacre, the Big Boss finally steps out of the vehicle. Gibeom regains consciousness and becomes the only person who sees the boss's face clearly. He also overhears that Chinese police are planning a raid, prompting the boss to prepare to flee the country. Shortly after, Deoki receives a call from Detective Park, saying he has just landed at the airport. Panicking, she reports that the Big Boss is preparing to escape